What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Streckbine coming to you live at youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to me anywhere you get your podcasts. And as always, you can find all of my work at si.com/NFL/Steelers. Happy Monday. Plenty happened over the weekend. Some good, not so great, other stuff. And well, at the end of the day, George Pickens is back in the headlines with more people talking and speculating about where he's ending up and how things are going with the Pittsburgh Steelers and their 24-year-old star wide receiver. We're diving into the latest news and notes for the black and gold, which includes some not so great news and notes from Sunday afternoon. Plenty of George Pickens speculation over the last 2 days, two big reports that emerged. And well, sometimes Cleveland Browns fans, sometimes Cleveland Browns players, sometimes Cleveland Browns media members always want to talk Pittsburgh Steelers. And this time, well, they've got some pretty wild things to say to the black and gold, Mike Tomlin and Omar Khan. We're diving into all of that, plus more, as we do every single day. I'm going to answer all of your questions, so start tossing them in the chat now. I'll get to them at the end of the show. Hope everybody enjoyed a great weekend in the city of Pittsburgh. I hope everybody's fired up about rookie minicamp this weekend. I'm fired up. I'll be at UPMC Rooney Sports Complex come Friday afternoon to meet the rookie class, dive into who's good, who's not good for 2 days. You get to watch these guys, hopefully get some tryout invites or some rookie minicamp invites who impress and earn roster spots. And well, plenty of takeaways. There's a lot to dive into. There's a lot going on with the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, let's get it kicking. We're going to start with some news and notes from over the weekend, and we will begin with a not so great news and notes. Former Pittsburgh Steelers first round pick Devin Bush was reportedly arrested near the city of Pittsburgh on Sunday due to harassment and I want to say it was not a simple assault, charges near the city of Pittsburgh and the city of Pittsburgh suburbs. No information was released outside of that. Tough situation overall. I'm obviously not going to sit here and dive into Devin Bush and give my thoughts on a matter that I know nothing about. But what I will say is the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Devin Bush situation continue to take wild turns. It was never a good scenario between the Michigan Star and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Seem to go south real fast, continues to climb up the what were you thinking board of Pittsburgh Steelers history. And as it continues, as the chaos continues, as you look back in the cat video and the social media wildness, and then the saying things like, doesn't matter what I do in my NFL career, I'm a top 10 pick, and that's all that matters. And now we're here wishing the best for everybody involved. Hope this situation ends with the least amount of emotional and physical damage as humanly possible. And as for Devin Bush, well, I don't have much to say. All I will say is that he is dealing with some off-the-field issues as the Cleveland Browns start or near OTAs, and the Pittsburgh Steelers do the same. More news and notes that came out over the weekend. Asante Samuel, former New England corner, former Philadelphia Eagles corner, believe Super Bowl champion on both teams, had some very harsh words to say about Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver, or former Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver, Antonio Brown. And there it is, not very often that Antonio Brown is on the not so crazy side of an argument, but this time he was. Asante Samuel took to Twitter to say this over the weekend, quote, "If Mike Tomlin never babied you at Antonio Brown, NFL would have been an afterthought." He wrote, "You could have survived anywhere else. You couldn't survive anywhere else. The Steelers organization and players allowed you to act crazy. Lucky you never played on my team. You would have been dealt with immediately and not by the coach. Facts." Look, AB is one of the biggest what is happening, the wildest turning It's hard to come up with adjectives to describe what AB has been like throughout his career, what he has been like post-career, how it all ended, and especially in the city of Pittsburgh. I mean, this guy was the greatest wide receiver in Pittsburgh Steelers history, and then one day decided, I'm no longer showing up. We're done. It's over. My time in Pittsburgh has come to a halt, and it will not regain speed anytime soon. Nobody saw it coming, but that's how it went down. It seemingly got crazier and crazier and crazier as he went through Oakland and New England and eventually Tampa Bay, and even afterwards, all the nonsense that was going down. But I will say this, in the NFL, and AB is a prime example, in the NFL, talent always wins. Always. And AB was top 6, maybe top 5, depending on who you're talking to, top 7, depending on who you're talking to, wide receivers of all time. Greatest wide receiver of his generation, and I think the argument's pretty firm in his case, unless you're a Julio Jones or really, really pushing for a Calvin Austin or a Calvin Johnson, which I think would be the only argument against Antonio Brown. Asante Samuel is not that guy. And in this argument, I hear you, Asante. I don't know where it started. I don't know why it happened. I don't know if Asante was just looking at it going, this morning, man, I'm choosing violence against Antonio Brown because that is just on my agenda. I had a dream about him. Whatever it was, whatever the case is, you're not winning this one simply because in the NFL, talent always wins. Antonio Brown would have made it on any roster. How long he would have lasted there, that's a question. But he would have found someplace because he won a Super Bowl in Tampa Bay, and then he returned. He walked off the field, and that's the only reason the NFL gave up for him or gave up on him is because he looked at it and said, I'm done playing. It's over. We're done. And that's when the final straw happened. Until then, AB remained AB. And Asante Samuel, man, look I almost never defend Antonio Brown. This time, I think I have to. All right. And the third one, before we dive into George Pickens and all the craziness happening with the Pittsburgh Steelers here. Former Cleveland Browns defensive back, Hanford Dixon, which I'm going to be very honest, okay? I was born in 1996. I got real into football at a young age, but when I first started watching football when I was, 5, 6 years old, I was a Denver Broncos fan because my dad was a Denver Broncos fan. And, there was no reason for me to have a Steelers game on television because my dad was watching or listening to Broncos games on the internet or on the radio. That's what he was doing. So I was all over the Denver Broncos. Once I started getting a grip on things, once I was actually started to be able to put my own thoughts out there in the NFL, I became a Steelers fan, hardcore Steelers fan. I was a hardcore Steelers fan my entire life until I became a Steelers analyst, Steelers insider with On SI. And from there, I still remain a fan, but I think I'm a fan of the players more than I am, and the people more than I am the team. I'm always pro player over anything else because I know these people personally. And at this point, I know they're good dudes. They deserve a lot, both in the building, outside the building, future guys, former guys, doesn't matter. I have no idea who Hanford Dixon is. And when I caught this one, all I kept saying was, I have no idea who Hanford Dixon is. Zero idea who Hanford Dixon is. But he said this on Shedeur Sanders and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Quote, they're, as in the Pittsburgh Steelers, gonna pay. I guarantee you Shedeur Sanders is going to make them pay every time we play them. Twice a year, he's going to make them pay. I believe that's a possibility. For sure a possibility. But my thoughts on Shedeur Sanders were the same before the draft as they are right now. I think this draft class stinks at the quarterback position. I don't think it's very good at all. I don't think Shedeur Sanders is a guy that in next year's draft goes in the first 2 rounds, whether his name is Shedeur Sanders or not. If you clone him, name him Will Smith, bad name, name him Joe Smith and toss him out there and give him good interviews, I still think he goes in the 3rd, the 4th round. Shedeur Sanders ain't that guy. And I think there's just as likely as a possibility that Shedeur Sanders is here only because of the Haslams and the owners of the Cleveland Browns than he is because he's good. And I think there's a possibility that if he does not put everything on the field and does not immediately look like a stud, that the Haslams have no control at that point and Shedeur Sanders ends up a free agent. I think that's just as likely as him starting this season. And either could happen, but it is nuts to think that Shedeur Sanders is going to just become this big, giant, I am the greatest of all time quarterback, potentially. But I'm not a guy that sits here and thinks Shedeur Sanders is going to make the Steelers pay. Now, don't get that wrong. Jameis Winston made the Steelers pay, which is, not great. Dorian Thompson-Robinson has made the Steelers pay in the past. Anybody could do it. I don't think the Browns are a terrible football team right now. I really don't. But I think that Myles Garrett, Mason Graham, that's probably about it. Maybe Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome make the Steelers pay more than anybody on the offensive side of the ball. And I have a very, very hard time sitting here saying that Shedeur Sanders is going to be the starting quarterback of the Cleveland Browns this year or the long-term starting quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers, but of the Cleveland Browns, But Hanford Dixon, I hope you have a great time. Again, I think Shedeur is a very decent quarterback. I do. I think he's not the worst quarterback in the world, but I also think that in a normal draft class, Shedeur is not a first-round pick, and I've held true to that for quite some time. And we'll see what happens. All right. That's all the news and notes that happened over the weekend. Let's talk about George Pickens, because his name was brought up not once but twice by two NFL insiders about the future of George Pickens and what nearly happened during the NFL draft. And I think both are very, very interesting. We'll start with Jeremy Fowler, who used to cover the Pittsburgh Steelers, still has a very good grip on the Pittsburgh Steelers and where things are and how they get places. And look, Jeremy Fowler is not in the building, but I can tell you he's definitely got voices in that building. He's definitely got insight into what is happening in UPMC Rooney Sports Complex. I've always believed that one. He said this one over the weekend on NFL Live, quote, "I was told in the end, George Pickens in the end wants to be in Pittsburgh, sort of flirted with a trade request, but he loves Mike Tomlin and wants to be part of things moving forward." Flirted with a trade request. I do not know the background to this. I do not know how it came up. I do not know what flirting with a trade request is for George Pickens, or when it happened, or why it didn't happen. I will say that I do not think George Pickens and the Pittsburgh Steelers are in a place where the Steelers are so attractive that you don't want to leave Pittsburgh. Why wouldn't you want to leave Pittsburgh if you're a wide receiver, especially one that's entering a contract year who could get paid a boatload of money a year from now? If you're George Pickens, you got to be looking at it going, Mason Rudolph isn't going to make me nearly as much as many other quarterbacks in the NFL. Will Howard's not going to make me nearly as much as many other quarterbacks in the NFL. Maybe Aaron Rodgers does, but Aaron Rodgers isn't here. He hasn't signed a deal. And I think that the Steelers are aware Aaron Rodgers is coming to the Pittsburgh Steelers, but I don't know if everybody in that locker room does. I know Cam Hayward, TJ Watt, Minkah Fitzpatrick, they're aware of the situation. I would imagine DK Metcalf's aware of the situation. I don't know if George Pickens is in those meeting rooms, in those exclusive texts, having those very secret, important conversations. I don't know if that's part of the deal. I don't. And if I'm George Pickens, I would want out of here. I think that George Pickens is going to make a boatload more money next season if he has a great year this year and probably needs a different quarterback to do so. Now, if I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers, I want to keep him. Why wouldn't you want to keep him? I would want George Pickens here this year, and if he behaves well and there's no off-the-field issues, I want him here next year and the year after that and the year after that. Him and DK Metcalf sound like a very dangerous duo. And I think that the Steelers are very open to trading him, but I also think that at this point in time, they've had a turn of events. they've had a change of mindset, and they really, truly are thinking about keeping George Pickens if things work out. But George might be considering moving on. I don't know. Again, you hear George Pickens and flirted with a trade request. My biggest pullback on this is George Pickens does not seem to be a mild-tempered, really lay things out type of guy. He seems to be an all-in sort of individual. And if that's the case, flirted with the trade request, maybe. But I feel like if TJ Watt, okay, and again, this is all hypotheticals. I'm playing tinfoil hat right here. If TJ Watt's got the cojones to put the peace sign up on Instagram and stir all sorts of nonsense, and the nonsense had to be there because he never pulled back on it. There's never this is nothing. He could have tweeted out a boatload of stuff. He could have posted another picture on Instagram. He's done none of that. He's looked at it and said, I knew exactly what I was doing. It was supposed to do what it did, and it worked. George Pickens has deleted all the Steelers stuff from his Instagram before. George Pickens has called out Kenny Pickett on Instagram before. George Pickens has done all of these things. You're telling me that if he's flirting with a trade request, if he's having thoughts of leaving, he's just going to stay quiet in the matter? He's not going to, there's just nothing that sparks that conversation. It's just, you know what? I'm ready to go. We're going to think about it. If there's no reason to ask for a trade request, I have a hard time thinking that there is any thought of a trade request. And George Pickens and the Pittsburgh Steelers, if they have had any conversations about a contract extension, they are very minimal conversations, and they have not gone very far. The Steelers at this point have not been focused on signing George Pickens long-term. They're focused on TJ Watt and Aaron Rodgers. They want both of those two deals done before they even consider what they can offer George Pickens long-term. So I don't know why that would start. And to be honest, it's May. So it's not a time in the year where if you haven't engaged in those conversations and you understand the pecking order, there's no place to be upset. Well, James Palmer tossed this one out here. He said on Bleacher Report, quote, his time in Pittsburgh in a lot of people's minds is limited. It has not gone well behind the scenes between George Pickens and the Pittsburgh Steelers and everybody involved. And this is leading up to, could he play for them in 2025? Certainly could. Would he be departing after this season? Yes, in a lot of people's minds. I, again, do not hold the same ground where we sit here today. Do I think that there is a chance he is dealt or a chance that he is let go after the season? Certainly. But the whole George Pickens going to play on the last year of his deal and then get paid next offseason thing, to me, doesn't make sense. It doesn't. Because that would mean the Pittsburgh Steelers have to tell George Pickens, you are not getting a contract extension. Do you want to know what wide receivers in the NFL do when they are told that they are not going to get a contract extension, except for T. Higgins? As the only case, it's the only one that you could look at and say he's a high pedigree player who isn't going to get paid, who is somehow okay with just continuing to get screwed over until he finally got his long-term deal. Outside of that, everybody does the same things. I'm getting paid before the final year of the deal. I'm getting paid before the final year of the deal. That's how this is going down. George Pickens has got to be in that same group because George Pickens deserves to get paid. I mean, people could say George Pickens isn't a wide receiver one. He sure as hell puts up wide receiver one numbers. The dude's got just under 3,000 yards in 3 seasons. His worst season is 800 yards as a rookie. He's got an 1,100-yard year. George Pickens is a stud. He deserves to get paid. And he's played with literally nobody at quarterback. His quarterback list, he's played with 5 starting quarterbacks in the NFL. That quarterback list is Mitch Trubisky, Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, Russell Wilson, and Justin Fields. I don't think it gets worse than that unless you play in Cleveland. That's the only place it might be worse. And he still put up fantastic numbers year after year after year. He's a guy who should get a contract. I don't see the Pittsburgh Steelers paying him next offseason. I truly think that if they are going to sign him, it would be this year. And it would be a, okay, let's get the deal done now type of situation. But that's where it gets very interesting, because if they're going to hold on to him for the final year of his deal, that means George is okay with that situation. But if George is flirting, and again, like I'm crossing paths here. I've spent 24 hours thinking about this. I had the conversation with my wife at dinner last night about just laying it all out, seeing if it made sense. That's how much it's been on my mind. If George Pickens was flirting with the idea of leaving Pittsburgh and instead chose to stay, to push it out to stay in Pittsburgh, but the Steelers do not view him as a long-term option, did they just not talk? Was nobody aware of how the other side felt in this situation? No, I don't think that's how it went down. I have a hard time believing that's how it went down. What I've been told is that the Steelers truly believe that there's a shot that they sign him long-term and that they hand him an extension this offseason. I don't know how close they are to that. I think there's a lot of factors that still dive into that to make that decision. But where we stand today, I get it. Months ago, the Steelers are trading George Pickens. The Steelers are trading George Pickens. I only relay the information given. The information given was, I got a phone call 2 days after the season ended that said the Pittsburgh Steelers are very interested for the right price getting rid of George Pickens. Now I don't know what happened, but somewhere along the way that changed, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are very open to keeping George Pickens. They want that situation. I don't know if it's financial. I don't know if it was a good conversation with George. I have no idea how things went down, but I do know the mindset changed. So to sit here and say that his time is limited, possibly, definitely, potentially, but I don't think I think it's almost a zero chance that George Pickens plays the final year of his deal in Pittsburgh, because I just don't see him being that cordial about the situation. I don't see the Pittsburgh Steelers being that cordial about the situation. I think if they're going to get rid of him, it's going to be this offseason, not next. Again, all the information or all the reports over the weekend say otherwise. I don't know what they're hearing. I don't know where they're hearing it from. I don't know when they're hearing it. I don't know if James Palmer or Jesse Palmer, whatever his name is, excuse me for that one, but if he heard all of this weeks ago, months ago, and is just continuing to latch on to it, potentially. A lot of people do that. But if this is new information, it's interesting to know where it came from, because I do not know I do not have that same set of information. I've heard, and me and Chris Carter were on the Locked On podcast last Thursday, I want to say, talking about George Pickens and talking about how we've both heard the same things, that he is more likely going to stay in Pittsburgh. 2 weeks ago, I had him on this show and said, overreaction, he's going to stay. And Chris said, yeah, I've heard the same things. I don't know where it's going. I have no idea. What I do know is that flirting with the trade request and then the Steelers not viewing him as a long-term option don't add up. Because if both of those scenarios were true, George would be gone. And I just don't see him leaving. Not right now. In the summer, he could. Certainly in the summer, he could. But where we stand today, too early. Information doesn't match. Again, do not see how this works out the way that these reports say it does. If I had to take a guess, George Pickens signs a 3-year deal this offseason to get him to 27 years old. It's worth $25 to $27 million a year. It's got a pretty decent signing bonus. And George stays, which if you asked me 2 months ago, I would have predicted George Pickens is gone for a second-round pick. And again, I'm only changing course because I go off the information told to me, and the information told to me has changed. And that's how the Steelers operate. For anybody who says flip-flop and all that stuff, look at if you want to dive into an NFL organization, that's what happens constantly, is they are always having conversations and constantly changing the narratives and reworking things to say, okay, this is what we want to do right now. Okay, since then, this has changed, this has changed, this has changed. We need to recalibrate. When we recalibrate, now it looks like this. That's how it works. Time changes so many things in the NFL, and I think that's what it did with George Pickens. Could be wrong, but I think that's what it did with George Pickens. All right. I know there's a lot of questions about this situation. I know there's a lot of questions about maybe Asante Samuel calling out AB, or somebody could explain to me who Hanford Dixon is. I'm interested in it all. I'm going to start diving into all of your questions to close out this Monday morning show. Super pumped to be here. Thank you guys for jumping on with me. I'll be right back. Going to take a quick break, and then we'll dive into it.
Pittsburgh, this one's for you. From the voices behind all Steelers talk comes Black and Gold apparel, your go-to for bold, fan-driven merch that reps the city, the Steelers, and everything in between. Whether you bleed black and gold or just love that Pittsburgh grit, we've got something for you. It's more than a podcast. It's a community. And thanks to your support, we're proud to bring the passion from our mics to your closets. Gear up, stand out, and show the world what real fans look like. Shop now at blackandgoldapparel.myshopify.com.
Shout out to all our members. Shout out to all our super chatters. Shout out to anybody who's bought a Black and Gold apparel, t-shirts. We got some good ones, dude. Boz, DK Metcalf, working on a couple others. So very excited to dive into it. With that said, we're diving into all your questions. Toss them in the chat on this Monday morning. We'll answer as many of them as I possibly can before I head out of here. Once again, shout out to our members. Once again, shout out to our super chatters. Appreciate all you guys. Let's get it kicking with Maddie. Should I get a DK Metcalf jersey or someone else? Also, what are you most excited about for the season? DK Metcalf jersey for sure. I think the number 4 is awesome. So, and he's here for 5 years, so you might as well get a DK Metcalf jersey. That would be my advice on that one. I also don't know if you have a name right now that Caleb Johnson, maybe, especially if he gets number 2, is super hard. But there's not really anybody that I'm looking at today currently and saying there's a guarantee he's around long term. Like there's a guarantee that he's the guy for the next 5-6 years, something like that. So I would go DK Metcalf for sure. I would say what I'm most excited for the season. I mean, Ireland's a big one. The Aaron Rodgers versus Green Bay Packers revenge game one final time is another one. The offense with a ground game that Arthur Smith is actually excited for is probably the biggest one I'm most excited for. I'm a big run the football guy in the NFL, big run the football guy. And I told that to Bill Cowher one time. And I just got like the grin, the smile that emerged from his face as like I was 25, 26 years old when I told him this. So I'm still young, but I was young. And I was talking to him he was in Pittsburgh. It was one of the few times I've ever seen him in Pittsburgh. And we were just talking, and I was telling him how great it was to meet him and how I grew up, like that he was the reason I loved Steelers football, blah, 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 whole nine. And I told him, I said, I still to this day am a run the football type of guy. And he just, yeah, big smile on the chin, man. It was a good time. Excited for Caleb Johnson and this off. I think it fits so perfectly. Like the Steelers have the right setup to make Caleb Johnson work. And I just think he's going to have such a great year. He's a rookie of the year candidate for sure. In my head, early one. I definitely agree that. L early, hey Noah, if we got Kirk Cousins and Mason Rudolph, can we make it past the first round of the playoffs? I don't think Mason Rudolph gets you past the first round of the playoffs. I think Kirk Cousins gives you a better opportunity, but I still think it's very slim. Like to me, Kirk Cousins is past where you're paying him the type of money that he's going to be paid. He's past a Super Bowl winning quarterback. Like to me personally, Kirk Cousins and playoff run do not go in the same sentence anymore. I think it's past that situation. He's past that point in his career. I'm not a big Kirk Cousins guy. I like Mason Rudolph. I think he's a good dude. I just don't think he's got the mechanics or anything like that to really like win these massive games. So again, if you end up facing the Dolphins or the Bengals or last year would have been the Texans in the first round of the playoffs. Yeah, you got a shot. But if you end up playing the Ravens, the Bills, the Chiefs, I don't think that either of these quarterbacks get you where you need to be. Noah, explain why you hate Mason so much. I'd much rather him over Rodgers. First off, okay, Connor, I do not hate Mason. I think Mason is a great dude, and I hope that he has a phenomenal year. Like I truly, truly do. I think Mason works his butt off. I think he's a very quality quarterback for the role that he plays in the NFL. But I think there is a very genuine distinction between starting caliber quarterbacks and backup caliber quarterbacks in the NFL, or the Geno Smith starting caliber quarterback, the Derek Carr starting caliber quarterback, I don't even know who else is out there that isn't that great, but I don't know. We'll stick with those two for right now. The Jameis Winston starting caliber quarterback, the Russell Wilson starting caliber quarterback, and then the really good starting caliber quarterbacks. And Mason could probably climb his way into that bottom half and that lower caliber. I think he's got that, but he's 29 years old. Like, at what point in a career do you stop looking at it and going, oh, this guy's got so much untapped potential? Like, yeah, I don't see it. Again, I hope that I prove him wrong, but I've always thought Mason's had a phenomenal arm, but he doesn't process the field super well. He's always been more of a rely on the check down guys than he is a throw a deep ball and take a shot. Now, in that 4-game stretch, he showed a lot of things that he never showed throughout his career, but I don't know if that 4-game stretch was just a screw it, I got nothing to lose, or a actually evolution of Mason Rudolph. I think we'll see more of it this year, but I do think I watched him last year and I don't think he was impressive at all. So I don't hate Mason Rudolph. I think he's a very quality quarterback for the tier that he's in, but I just think there's a distinction between guys that can win a Super Bowl and guys that could win 10 games. And, I just don't think Mason's in that win you a Super Bowl caliber range. I just don't. Again, I hope he's wrong, but I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think he is. I also don't think Aaron Rodgers is a guy that's going to win you a Super Bowl. I think Aaron Rodgers could win you 4 games this season. I just think that in the grand scheme of things, I'm going to put my eggs in the 4-time MVP basket over I am. If Mason Rudolph was 27 years old, 25 years old, there's a different conversation to be had. But Mason Rudolph will be 30 by the time this season ends. Like, this is not a young quarterback anymore. This is still this is a veteran quarterback. He's been in the league 7 seasons. Like, we've seen a lot of them. That's how I view it. That's how I view the Mason Rudolph situation. It's no hate on Mason Rudolph, just being realistic about all of it. And Joe, with the GP and front office situation, attitudes on both sides changed dramatically after they signed DK. Do you think taking the on-field pressure off GP by adding DK is the solution in this change? I think that the George Pickens pressure was not the issue. He wants the pressure. Excuse me. George is a guy who wants to be wide receiver 1. He wants somebody to throw him the football 14 times a game. I mean, all wide receivers do, but George is a guy that could back that up. He can make that work. And I don't think that the I'm going to have less of a workload is what's pulling George back in this situation. That's not my, or I'm going to have less of a workload is what's helping George improve in this situation. I don't know where it came from. I think there was a lot of rumbles. I think that George is looking at this financially because he has to look at it financially. I think George is a guy that understands where he is in his NFL career and the opportunity in front of him. Like, that's the thing, is players constantly are aware that you get 10, maybe 15 years in this thing, and you got to make as much money as humanly possible in those 10 to 15 years. Like, you just have to do that. And George is a dude who could make a lot of money in a wide receiver market right now that is red hot. He's going to make more money outside of Pittsburgh than he is in Pittsburgh. That's almost for sure. Whether he stays or not. Like, even if he played out this season, he's going to get paid more elsewhere than he would Pittsburgh. That's just how it always happens. T. Higgins isn't making $27 million a year or whatever he is. He's making $35 million a year if he hits free agency this offseason. When it comes to the front office and the attitude changes, I think the DK trade and signing kind of threw everybody in Pittsburgh for a loop. From my understanding of it, nobody saw it coming. Nobody was aware that it was that close, or that they were even considering signing him to such a massive deal after they made the trade. So it kind of happened very fluidly, and once it went down, everybody was stunned by it. And I think it led to a lot of, we didn't have the conversation situations, and the Steelers should have had those conversations. Now, I think it moved too fast to have those conversations. You're not going to call TJ in the middle of the night and be like, hey, dude, just giving you heads up, we're about to trade for DK Metcalf, and we're going to sign him to a boatload of money. But that's okay. We're still going to sign you to a boatload of money. Call George, hey, look, we're about to trade for DK. It means nothing to you. Potentially, it means nothing to you. We still don't know. I don't think they had it all worked out yet. And because of that, it kind of threw everybody for what the hell was this type of situation. And I think they're still working those things out. Maybe that's when the flirted with the trade situation kind of happened. The trade request happened. If it happened recently, I would imagine it's because of all the rumors. I would imagine it's because his agent knows that Dallas called Pittsburgh and there were real conversations about that. And the agents know these things. Doesn't look good for the team most of the time. And to be honest with you, Omar Khan is trying to save face so hard about George Pickens that I think it's honestly hurting, because it's such an honest lie. Like, it's such a blatant lie. Like, we want George Pickens here. We want George Pickens here. But we are going to engage in conversations during the NFL draft, even though we said we weren't. I think that looks bad. I think players take that seriously, and I don't know. But I do think that when it comes to George Pickens and DK on the field, they're going to thrive as long as they have the quarterback. And if that's the case, I mean, George is going to like that, because if George has 1,200 yards this season and more than DK, which is a possibility, in a couple of touchdowns, he's going to get paid handsomely a year from now, and he deserves to. He definitely deserves to. All right, let's keep it trucking here. I'm MF tired. Still no Rodgers. So what would you say the Steelers' record would be under Howard as the starter than Rudolph as the starter? And who would you rather see starting? I'd rather see Mason Rudolph starting. I think if you're the Steelers, you'd rather see Mason Rudolph starting. I think the over-under record for Mason Rudolph is 8-9 games, somewhere in that ballpark. The over-under for Will Howard is 6, I would say 6.5. Look, I understand that I'm the guy, I'm the Debbie Downer, that's who I am, but just realistically about the situation, Will Howard is a 6th-round rookie who was not viewed as a top-tier talent coming out of college until his final 2 games or 3 games, and I get that run could be great in a launching pad, but I also think that if Will Howard was a 3rd-round pick, I'd still say his over-under is 6 games. I just think he's going to make a lot of mistakes. I think the game's going to move way faster for him. I think his offensive line is going to be half as good as it was in Ohio State. His wide receiver weapons are great, but who knows what's going to happen? And the NFL is a drastic change. Drastic change. That's why Caleb Williams wins 5 games. That's why, you very rarely get the CJ Strouds or the Jaden Daniels. Like, that's why, because it is so. That's why Sam Howell, who was taken in the 5th round in a bad quarterback class, stunk when he came in, because that's what happened. It's such a change. I would say 6 games for Will Howard. I'd rather see Mason Rudolph starting if you're hoping to win a Super Bowl, but I don't know if that would be the Steelers' outlook on things. Shout out to Macaroni Salad for gifting 1 All Steelers Talk membership. Shout out to all our members. Shout out to Macaroni Salad. Can't thank you guys enough. I think we gave out like 20 on Friday, which is absolutely nuts, but thank you guys. For real, thank you guys. Marlon Lewis, Noah, I was here during the Justin hype. I remember the Russell hype. Is the Will Howard hype less worrisome or more worrisome from the fan base? It's way more worrisome. It's way more worrisome. I mean, the Justin hype was real, like had justification behind it, because I think that Justin Fields has so much untapped potential and he needs to be in the right situation, but I thought the Steelers were the right situation. The Russ hype, I thought, was something that came fast and then died quick, and that's how it should have went, because he did look good. And when you have a guy who's won Super Bowls and made Pro Bowls and all these things, like, and he comes out hot, you're like, okay, look at that. Maybe Russ is back. The Denver Broncos stink. It's not Russell Wilson, it's the Denver Broncos. And that's believable. It's very believable. Will Howard is a guy that, like, I think the hype would be here if they drafted Kyle McCord. I think the hype would be here if they drafted anybody in the NFL draft. And that's just because he's a quarterback and you hope for the best. I hope for the best with Will Howard. I think that he's a quality, lower tier quarterback, a guy who could be Mason Rudolph, and that's awesome. If you need Will Howard to spot start you 4 times a season, 5 times a season, he's a great guy to have. That's a guy you need on your football team. It's a very important piece to have on your football team. I mean, I think Will Howard could be better than Mr. Trubisky, could be better than Landry Jones, can be better than, I think, to be honest, Kenny Pickett. I think he could be better than Kenny Pickett, but I don't think that he's like the next Tom Brady, and I don't think that where we stand today, it's safe to start thinking that he is. I mean, I get it. It's exciting. Should be excited. Be excited about it. I'm not going to be the guy that tells you not to be excited about it, but I think it's, if you're listing them, the more worrisome is Will Howard and the belief that he's going to be the next franchise quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Although it's going to die down because eventually they will draft another guy who will have that franchise quarterback pedigree and be able to kind of step into that role. John, why it's always former Steelers and not current Browns linebacker with Devin Bush. It is current Browns linebacker. But this is a Steelers podcast, so we gotta, I wouldn't talk about it if he wasn't a former Pittsburgh Steelers player. Just get arrested all the time. That's just, unfortunately, that's what it is. Sam with diabetes. Hey, Noah, if we trade Pickens and throw in a third, how likely are we to get a first back? I think pretty likely, to be honest. I think you could trade George Pickens for a second-round pick. I think you toss in a third-round pick, and I think you could get into the first round. I do. I actually truly believe that you could. I don't think the Steelers would. I think they'd try. I do. I really genuinely think they'd try. I think George Pickens is worth so much more than people want to get credit for, which, like, to me doesn't make sense. Like, if people want on one side to like hype up names like Mason Rudolph and Will Howard and that kind of stuff and be like, these guys are so much better than anybody wants to say they are, somebody should acknowledge that George Pickens can be a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL if you put him in the right situation. Like, he's got that talent. He's unbelievable. The guy is, and he does things in football games where, I'm not lying, he does crazier things in practice on a daily basis because the quarterback can actually get him the damn ball. It's nuts. I think George, I personally, if there were 0 off the field issues, would give up a first round pick for George. I don't run an NFL team. My NFL team would stink. I would admit that, but I truly think that you could get a first for George. I think he's worth, if you toss in George in third, I think he's worth the first with ease. Broderick Wallace, salt or sugar on the rim of a margarita. Happy Cinco de Mayo. Happy Cinco de Mayo, everybody. I hope everybody is enjoying it. Go get some margaritas. Go eat some tacos. Go have a great time. Wife is working late, so I'm not a chef, guys. Not a chef, but I'm going to try to whip up some tacos here. And I don't think I could do margaritas. I love a margarita, but I'm just not good at, if I'm at home and I'm making somebody, hey, no, can you make me a drink? Yeah, no doubt. Here's an old fashioned. That's what I got on that's in the back pocket at all times. Old fashioned, I can make you one hell of a Jack and Coke. You know what I mean? Keeping it simple. Irish car bombs if you're trying to get crazy. Margaritas, I think, are out of my realm of possibilities. And I always got a couple of brews because, nothing's easier than a brew. I'm a salt guy at all times, Broderick. At all times, I'm a salt guy. If you want to switch it up and go sugar, great. But I'm a salt guy, and I think that I will celebrate with you and have a margarita tonight. I'm gonna have to order them from somewhere, but shout out. Happy Cinco de Mayo, everybody. Marlon Lewis, is Cordero Patterson going to be on the roster? I do not think so. I I'm stunned he's still on the roster. To be honest, I don't know why he's still on the roster. I bet he's going to be there for OTAs. Again, I don't know why. I don't know what the situation is. I don't know if the Steelers like really truly believe that what they saw last year was a mistake, or they, Cordell Patterson is the guy, and I'm going to get so much hate for this from probably Cordell Patterson and his team. But Cordell Patterson is the guy that like the entire world last season watched and went, why are you on the field? Why is this still happening? And for some reason, it feels like the Steelers just like completely overlooked it. They haven't watched the film. They maybe watched the film in a different way. I have no idea. It is the most mind-blowing position. I mean, they let Larry Ogunjobi go before Cordell Patterson. What? How did we get here? Like, that one doesn't make any sense to me. Doesn't make any sense to me. Yeah, I don't. Cody Silva, Antonio Brown roasted Shiloh Sanders on this clip he posted, but then I seen Sanders clips and he was covering him good. I don't know what to think of it. I'll say this. One-on-one drills are always designed for the defender to lose. Always. It is very rarely that you're doing a one-on-one drill and the defender like looks like a stud, at any level. It's always been designed for the wide receiver to win. And I don't believe anything anybody posts on the internet. So I would imagine there was some good Shiloh stuff, some AB. If you put them up there 10 times, even at their same age, even at their same situation, even with Antonio Brown now being a rapper and definitely not being in shape, I would put my money on Antonio Brown to win that battle out of 10 reps. I always would. Apparently there's a Kanye West song that came out too, and I don't know if AB's on it, but that would be hilarious. All right, let's keep it trucking. Marlon, once again, what's the over-under on the Steelers versus Browns scoring being 9-6, all defense and very little offense? I would say that it's very likely that the Pittsburgh Steelers and Cleveland Browns have one defensive hell of a game this year. John Mason will make George Pickens more money than Russ would have if he had resigned. GP and Rudolph had a good connection. I mean, I agree with this one. Definitely, I agree with this one. I'm not a Russell Wilson guy. I was all about Russ when Russ looked good for like those 2-3 games. Once he got figured out, it was clear as day he was not the quarterback that everybody was hoping that he was going to be, that he showed he could be in those 2-3 games. I think George is going to get paid handsomely no matter what. If George Pickens walks into free agency at 25 years old and at bare minimum puts up 600-700 yards this season, he's getting paid. He's getting paid so much money. Christian Kirk, great example, started the insane trend of people progressing, like getting more money than they probably deserve because he was talented, but in a bad situation. That's going to be George. That's definitely going to be George. I will say, though, that I think Rodgers makes him the most because Rodgers is going to be able to anticipate more things and utilize. I think Rodgers is the guy that, he's always going to be George. Where's George? Where's George? Where's George? Where's George? Where's George? I just think that's what Rodgers is going to do. That's what Russ did last year. It seems like what those older guys do is just know who they're going to beforehand, and it's hard not to throw the football to George Pickens. It is. Spice Creation, Sanders didn't do anything special but make it possible for 8 of his receivers to make it into the NFL. Y'all haters kill me. Look it. I hope that Shedeur Sanders does great things. 8 wide receivers is a wild number that I was not aware of. Shout out Jimmy Horn, man. Shout out Jimmy Horn. I thought he was ending up in Pittsburgh. I thought Jimmy Horn was ending up in Pittsburgh. All right, let's keep it trucking here. Shout out to Tony B snagging a membership today. Thank you guys so much. If you want to become a member, you could do so by hitting the link in the description below. Lindsay, if the Steelers wanted to trade George Pickens, why did they not do it during the NFL draft? I mean, from my understanding, they didn't get an offer that was good. I think the Cowboys were the most interested team and lowballed them quite significantly throughout the draft process. The Steelers, that was the biggest part of this, okay? Is the Steelers from day one, from the first conversation I ever had, the Steelers were not going to give up George Pickens for nothing. They were not going to settle on a trade for George Pickens. If they were going to move on from George at all, this remains this to today. If they were going to move on from George, it is going to be a deal, was going to be a deal that they could not say no to. That's what it would be. They're not going to third round pick. Nope, not happening. Super late second to the Kansas City Chiefs. Nope, not happening. To the Buffalo Bills. Nope, not happening. They're being very smart about this decision because they know that if George plays this year and you just let him go next year, you get a comp pick for him. You probably get a third round comp pick for George Pickens. That's pretty good. To get a year out of him and a third round pick is pretty all right compared to just a third round pick and you lose George Pickens. The Steelers aren't going to do that. They would never even consider, wouldn't even consider trading him for anything less than a second. All right, keeping it trucking here. Cody Silva, why would Omar Khan say talks went good with Pickens and they're planning on keeping him and DK? That's the only reason I watch only people that cover Pittsburgh. The national media speaks nonsense. So I agree with this, okay? But I also know that Omar wasn't telling the truth. Like you have to listen to all of it and view it as the grand, like what is the big picture? It's more than just words. It's always more than just words. The NFL and the front office, especially in Pittsburgh, is designed to keep you uninformed. That's what it is. It's Omar says things like, we want to keep George and talks have gone well, blah, blah, blah. They didn't have any talks with George. None. I know that one. I also know that they do want to keep George, but from the beginning, they've had conversations. And then they had conversations during the NFL draft, even though Omar Khan said, no, his exact words were no, we are not going to have trade talks during the NFL draft. And they did. So you have to take all that into consideration. You constantly have to look at it and say, okay, he's walking the line on this. Is it a possibility? Is it not? Now, don't get me wrong. The national media knows nothing about the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they've never known anything about the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's always been the truth. I mean, it's wild to hear what national guys outside of like Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport say compared to what I'm hearing from those inside the building. But I still look at it and say, you have to read into everything that they say because it just like he's learning from Mike Tomlin. He's learning from Mike Tomlin, and Mike Tomlin loves to lie to the media. Miguel, the reason GP didn't get traded at the draft is the rest of the NFL sees him as the 32nd ranked wide receiver like his stats showed last season. GP fans shaking my head. I mean, George Pickens, if he played the rest of the year and didn't get hurt there at the end, was probably a top 10 wide receiver statistically. Top 5, I think he was at one point late in the season. I think George is phenomenal. I just think he's a head case is too much. I think George is not easy to work with. Let's say that George is not easy to work with as a player, and I think that makes it difficult in these situations. I think talent alone, if he was just talent, I mean, he'd be the easiest decision you had. But you have to take all of it into consideration when you're looking at it in the big picture. Thomas, I know. Why are we assuming that George Pickens is going to do something that GP hasn't done yet? Because it seems like we are just assuming without actual evidence. Remember what Ayuk was like in San Francisco. I've been saying this since the jump that nothing is set in stone with George Pickens because you have no idea what's going to happen when those conversations finally do start and the Steelers tell him, here's your low ball offer, take it or leave it, or we're not signing you this season. We have no idea how George Pickens is going to react. And if he doesn't react well, that changes. That's why it's constant rotation of I get called out all the time. I get DMs constantly from people being like, you switch up all the time, bro. You're constantly changing your opinion, blah, 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 blah. Oh, I mean, I go off of what I'm told constantly. And what I'm told is always changing because, like, so much so that during the NFL draft, I was told repeatedly that the Steelers are not interested in a quarterback, not interested in a quarterback, not interested in a quarterback. And then Shadur shows up and it's like, okay, well, Mike Tomlin really likes Shadur Sanders. So maybe they are interested in a quarterback because he really likes Shadur Sanders. And I don't know if the Steelers are going to be able to talk him out of that. And I'm like, okay, great. So I got to start talking about that. And then after the draft pick, it was, well, last second, everybody was able to talk Mike Tomlin out of wanting Shadur Sanders. So the Steelers avoided him. I'm like, all right, well, nobody told me that until after the draft. So, it's a constant evolution of information and how the Steelers process things. And because of that, everything's going to change. So right now it's the Steelers want to keep him. Bad reaction. I bet you that changes. I definitely bet you that changes. All right, let's keep it trucking here. Did you see where GP commented on pics of Steelers wide receivers working out and said, keep grinding, fam? No, I did not. I think George is going to be a team player until he's not. Like that's the strategy right now. There's literally zero reason for him to be upset about anything. George Pickens right now is a guy that's on a team under contract. Those contract extensions have not stopped, have not faded, or have not started, and therefore there's no bad feelings. There can't be any bad feelings between both sides because there's nothing to gain bad feelings off. So that one doesn't surprise me. Where can if we're talking about black and gold apparel, you can go to blackandgoldapparel.myshopify.com. That's also in the store tab on our YouTube channel, right up the top there. Appreciate everybody who snags a t-shirt for real. Can't tell you guys enough. Matt, what's with the lack of rookie content from the Steelers? Are they in town yet? So great question. The rookie mini camp is Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Guys will start arriving Wednesday, Thursday to get accustomed to the city and everything else. That's when you'll start getting content. It'll be a lot this week. Will Howard and Jack Sawyer showed up over the weekend. I would imagine a lot of the others show up throughout the week. Mini camp starts Friday. So that's when it'll happen. Keeping it trucking here as we no. Get a Jack Frazier jersey, good for the next 10 to 12 years. Cannot agree with you more. Yinzer Joe, good morning. Want to know if we should have faith in our coordinators to shape our rookies out of bad habits, like what they were used to getting away with in college might not work out well in the NFL. There are a couple of coordinators that I'm really high on with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and that's Tom Arth. I think he's an absolute stud. I'm a big Zach Azzani guy, but I think he's still a bit young. And Carl Dunbar is an absolute animal. Denzel Martin is an absolute animal. I like Gerald Alexander as well. And Eddie Faulkner, I think, is incredible. I mean, go look at Jaylen Warren and you could thank Eddie Faulkner for that one. So I think there's some good pieces that the Pittsburgh Steelers could in key areas figure it out and definitely shape these rookies well. American Steel, which added player, free agent, or rookie will have the biggest impact in the Berg this season or over their entire career? Also waiting on that AST terrible towel. I know I've got some tough, like we're running into obstacles with the terrible towel because you can't just make a terrible towel and sell it without like you violating some sort of NFL Pittsburgh Steelers thing. Everybody makes terrible towels. It's awesome, but to give them away is different than selling them. So working it out, I'm not trying to break any rules. That's my biggest thing here is I'm not trying to do anything illegally because if we had 5,000 followers on YouTube, yeah, do everything illegally. But at this point, we do pretty okay on YouTube when it comes to viewership. And I would imagine somebody somewhere is going to get pissed off and tell me even if it was as small as we're not using your voice on the Steelers videos anymore, I'd be like, come on, bro, that's fun. My mom loves those things. So, we'll figure it out. I am trying to figure it out. TBD Enigma. No way you're naming 32 wide receivers better than George Pickens. Can't agree more, my friend. I got a crazy curl going on up here. We're just going to let that one rock. You can't, dude. George Pickens is, again, like in my opinion, George Pickens has the ability to be a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL. Maybe top 5. Like, he's got the talent. It's about, can he put it on the field? I don't know if that's the case yet, but I do think that if you put him in the right situation, he could for sure become like an elite wide receiver in the NFL. But again, that right situation has to have a quarterback. It's got to have a head coach that's not going to deal with his nonsense or be able to shut down his nonsense. One of the two. I think both of those are very important for the Pittsburgh Steelers, or for George Pickens in his development. Knock, member for 1 month. Hey, appreciate you, brother. Cannot tell you guys enough how much I appreciate all of the members. It's a good time. If you got questions, toss them into the call-in show for Wednesday. Also working on some finalization of some things to try and shape how we're going to approach everything throughout this summer and moving into the season. It's probably going to be a little bit because my brother gets married in June. Have some stuff going on over the next month that's going to get chaotic, but once I return, things will be, I think, very exciting. Very exciting. Rec 7, would you say Omar putting off the contracts would be one of the Kevin Colbert things he does? We kind of wish he would stop doing. I know we don't negotiate during season, but we should get ahead of contracts. That's not, I mean, like, it is a Kevin Colbert thing. That's an Art Rooney thing. It's always been a Rooney thing. It's an Art Rooney, but it's like it's a Rooney family thing. It's a Pittsburgh Steelers thing. They've always done it because they've always looked at it the same way, is that during the season, we're focused on football and we're only focused on football. Now, maybe minor contracts they should start to, but I don't think you should be negotiating with George Pickens in week 6. Like, I just don't think that should happen. I don't think that you should be negotiating with, I mean, you negotiated with Pat Freiermuth. You got that done. And I think that was a great move. And that walks the line. Like, that's where things are changing, is once the season ends or starts, the Steelers are done. But they used to not negotiate during the preseason. They used to just, once they got back from Latrobe, it was over. I think that they have a decent setup now. You know, guys like TJ Watt, if week 1 shows up and you still don't have a deal, yeah, I'm still negotiating. I'm not stopping anything for TJ Watt, just because of a rule. George Pickens, I think, would be in the same boat. There are a couple of guys. But again, I think it's a Steelers thing. It's not an Omar Khan or a Kevin Colbert thing. And do I wish they would adjust it? Yeah, I do wish they would adjust it, but I don't think that I don't think it necessarily needs to be everybody, if that makes some sense. Pittsburgh Hornets on first downs. Pittsburgh ran at the 4th highest rate, 59.1%. Do you see that going up or down this year, and why? Down. The Steelers had the most predictable offense ever last year. It was not great. And where we stand today, I expect that to change. Like, I expect, if it's Aaron Rodgers to come into here and have some influence, I expect Arthur Smith to have more influence. Arthur Smith and Mason didn't get along, and because of that, things were tough. I would look at it and say that's going to change. The offense as a whole is going to change. That's going to go down. I would hope that they're less predictable. I mean, I could be totally wrong, but there's a lot in me that says Rodgers will have influence, that Caleb Johnson and Jalen Warren will have influence, that a better offensive line will have influence, and that Arthur Smith being more comfortable with the people around him will have influence this season. Miguel, you can wish GP would grow up and be good in one hand and crap in the other and see what gets filled first. I can tell you what gets filled first. Miguel, not a George Pickens guy. Look at, I mean, he's got the track record to say that he should be concerned, and that, you should be concerned. Nothing should change there. It should remain the same. If you are somebody who thinks suddenly George Pickens is not going to be an issue, you're putting a lot of faith into a situation that has proved the opposite time and time again. So I stand with you on this one. Like, I think that George Pickens has to prove that he is trustworthy off the field and even on the field. And I don't know if we're going to get that, but I hear you. I do hear you. All right, we're going to end it with this one. Pittsburgh Hornets, what % chance would you say Aaron Rodgers is becoming a Steeler? Could I toss a crazy number at you guys and not everybody crap on me and tell me that I'm an idiot if I'm wrong? Because things could change, you know? I know the situation. I'm not revealing the situation. I think it's too personal to reveal. And I don't even know exactly all the details. What I do know is that there are significant steps in what Aaron Rodgers is dealing with right now. And as long as those steps go smoothly, everything looks optimistic for both Aaron Rodgers and the Pittsburgh Steelers. And again, I'm not revealing any more information than that. I don't think it's right to reveal any more information than that. But what I will say is I do think that if it goes well, if everything goes well, which is the biggest, that's all. I can't control anything. Rodgers, nobody can control anything. If everything goes well, the % chance that Aaron Rodgers becomes a Steeler, in my head, 90%. 90% that Aaron Rodgers becomes a Steeler. I think something drastic would have to happen. That something drastic could happen. We'll see what happens. I'm putting 90% on it. Rex 7's got a follow up here. I just mean stop pushing the contracts out in general, like sign George Pickens and stop playing. Even TJ, just get it done. I don't want to play around with this. I do think it's steps and orders, but I agree with you. Like the Steelers lowball a lot of their guys, and Omar Khan came in here not doing that. He came in here, signed Minka to a big deal, signed Boswell to a big deal, was able to get a deal done with TJ Watt. It's got to be the same situation. Like something changed somewhere. I agree. I think they should get these things done earlier. It helps everything. I think after free agency always helps more if you could push it out past the draft and then sign it. Like right now where we're at, the Steelers understand their financials completely. I think that's exactly when you sign guys like TJ Watt and George Pickens and all these other names. Like that's the best time. But the Steelers are going to wait till July, and I think that's way too late. Like, there's just no reason to wait that long. I agree with you. I think in the Steelers offseason, right now should be the time that they have somebody working on rookie contracts. That's not even a big deal. Omar should be negotiating with TJ right now and trying to get that done before OTAs. Like, that's when you want that, because you don't want the headlines. You don't want the nonsense. You want TJ to be there. You want TJ to be healthy. You want TJ to be participating. Like, now is the right time. You know your financials. You know your roster set up. You know everything that needs to be done or what could change, so on and so forth. Now you could figure it out. And I think I agree with you. July is ridiculous. Why are we waiting till July to sign a guy that you're going to sign? At the end of this, you're going to sign TJ Watt. Why would you wait till July? I agree with you. All right. With that said, guys, I'm heading out of here. Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Happy Cinco de Mayo, everybody who's celebrating today. As always, make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your audio podcast. Please, please, please go hit those downloads on Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star review. I can't thank you guys enough. And as always, you can find all of my work at si.com/NFL/Steelers. With that said, it's supposed to be a nice one today. Enjoy it. Enjoy a beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.